Everybody, it is Brent Axe, and we are live here on the Syracuse Orange Basketball Facebook page. A very happy Thanksgiving Eve to all of you. We are here presented by our friends at Krause Health, and we're coming off the heels of a Syracuse basketball loss. The Orange now 4-2 on the 2019-20 season as they fall to the Oklahoma State Cowboys at the Barclays Center in Brooklyn in the preseason NIT tournament, 86-72. So the Orange will now take Thanksgiving off, get back at it Friday night at the Barclays Center against Penn State, a matchup and a rivalry that has not taken place on the basketball court since 1982. Tonight, Syracuse running into foul trouble, some key players picking up fouls early, a lot of whistles in this game. Syracuse and Oklahoma State combined to shoot 65 free throws in this game. Refs calling it tight. Elijah Hughes, the only one who really did anything on the offensive end for the Orange. He scores 28 points. That's a career high. But nobody else was hitting the shots for the Orange tonight. A tough offensive night. Second tough game for Syracuse this year where they played a high major team or a Power 5 team. Virginia, of course, to start the season. Oklahoma State tonight. So a young team certainly showing its struggles. Buddy Boeheim and Joe Girard III really struggled. Joe Girard III's 19th birthday today, by the way, shooting the basketball. Marek Dolzaj really struggling on all angles. Syracuse missing not only a lot of free throws, they went 23 of 37. Let me double check myself on that. Syracuse 26 of 37 from the free throw line. That's 70%. I mentioned Hughes scored 28 points, but everybody else just pretty awful, frankly, on the offensive end. Marek Dolzaj missed some bunnies, went 1 for 3 overall. Barama Sidibe got into foul trouble. He just goes 3 of 7, 6 points, had 9 rebounds on the night to lead Syracuse. Quincy Guerrier with 4 points and 6 rebounds. Robert Braswell came in, gave Syracuse a three-pointer, but not much else there. Howard Washington Jr. didn't score in his quick time in the game. Bryson Goodine had a few points in playing in spot duty for the Orange tonight. But the key thing, both Joe Girard and Buddy Boeheim go 1 of 7 from three-point range. It's 2 of 14, and they combine to shoot 5 of 22. This is a basketball team that's going to live and die by the three. And as Jim Boeheim said after the game, and as we clearly saw here, this is an Oklahoma State team that was very physical, likely just dashing through the paint like a hot knife through butter, like a hot, like gravy over a turkey, right? Use a cheesy Thanksgiving reference for tomorrow, right? But they could not stop him. He was all over Girard on the defensive end. He really struggled against a big physical player, and Girard is certainly going to see plenty of those as Syracuse goes forward, not only in ACC play, but in non-conference play. This was the start of a critical 5-game stretch for Syracuse. It's really going to shape their NCAA tournament resume. It's a lot of quad 1 and quad 2 games for Syracuse here, starting with Oklahoma State tonight, and it will continue against Penn State Friday, and then Iowa at the Carrier Dome on December the 3rd, and then you slip in another ACC game there against Georgia Tech, and then Georgetown on the 14th. That's an opportunity for Syracuse to shore up its non-conference opponents and its non-conference schedule for the NCAA Tournament Selection Committee. The Orange lost 4 non-conference games a year ago, 110 in the ACC, and that was good enough to get them into the NCAA tournament. But this is a team that's got to win in different ways, and as we said, if they don't shoot threes, they live and die by that. They have no inside presence on offense. They have little inside presence defensively right now, and a team like Oklahoma State with a guy like Onley inside, who is one of the leading shot blockers in the country right now. There was a stretch late in the game where they just kept pounding the ball inside to him, and Oklahoma State took a 68-51 lead and put this one in out of reach. Now, it was interesting because in the first half, Syracuse had a 21-3 run and looked like they were going to at least make this a game, go back and forth with this Oklahoma State team. But we mentioned the foul trouble they got into. I'm not blaming the refs by any way. I mean, I can, quabble with a few calls that they made. They called it tight on both sides, so that kind of evened out there. But Syracuse just couldn't handle the physicality of Oklahoma State, a bigger, better team in Oklahoma State who moves to 6-0 on the year in this one. So not a good showing at all. Thanks to everybody that is here in the comments. I want to jump right in and see what you're saying here momentarily. Happy Thanksgiving to all of you that are here and saying happy Thanksgiving as well. So you guys keep going at it there in the comments, and I'll jump in here in just a sec. I want to throw just a couple more things at you. Statistically in this one, Syracuse goes 26 of 37 from the free throw line. That's 70%. Oklahoma State was 23 of 28. Free throws matter, right? Hashtag 82%. for Oklahoma State. The Cowboys did 49% overall. It's 27 of 55, 9 of 26 from three-point range. Couple of guys in particular, Jajagua for Oklahoma State was 4 of 11 from three-point range, and Harris Jr. hit 3 of 7 from distance, and that was good enough for Oklahoma State there. Syracuse shot overall 19 of 56. It's 33%. This is an 8 of 31 from three-point range, and Hughes had a bulk of those, had 5 3-pointers for the Orange. He had to play with, at times 3 fouls, with 4 fouls. Boeheim had to leave him in because he was the only one who was connecting on the offensive end for the Orange. Syracuse was out-rebounded in this one, 39-31. 17 assisted baskets for Oklahoma State, 14 for the Orange. Syracuse did have 9 steals in this one, but Oklahoma State answered that with 12. So that's the story statistically. It didn't add up to anything good for Syracuse tonight. Let's see what you guys are saying in the comments here. Matt says, Brent, they didn't get a whole lot of good looks. Except for that 19-3 stretch in the first half, they don't appear to be able to create. They've got to have crisp, quick passing. Girard held the ball too much. Has to get it moving quicker. He caught in a lot of bad spots in the paint. Matt, that's a great observation, particularly against a bigger player like Likely. This team is, when Syracuse pressed, when Syracuse managed to get it up-tempo at times, like you mentioned, I should say, in that 21-3 run they went on, they look good. And they got some open looks, and that's the thing. Even the good looks they got tonight, they could not finish at the rim. Strange that Syracuse was not able to do that, but that's it. When it's just this stalled, wait for the shot clock to expire offense, that just doesn't work. Athletically, this team looked outclassed by Oklahoma State tonight. This team does not appear to have the athletes you would think at this point. There's some young players that I think could really develop there. Quincy Guerrier had an okay night. We mentioned he got to the free throw line a bit and rebounded, but still looked lost at times. On the defensive end, Bryson Goodine had his moments. Girard even kind of recovered and had his moments. There was a couple of spurts there where he went on a couple of runs, made some great passes, backdoor cut to Elijah Hughes inside, hit a couple of threes, but for the most part, looked like a team overwhelmed tonight, a young team really trying to find its way. But as Jim said, they were out-physicaled in this one, and they look outclassed athletically in the 2 games they've played. Good teams this year, one being Virginia, one being Oklahoma State, and they just don't look like they measure up right now in that department. And I'm concerned about Dolezaj. I think he kind of is what he is, but I don't see any tangible improvement there. I don't see a guy whose shot is more refined, who's playing smarter. He always plays hard, but hasn't necessarily played smarter. I don't think he's gotten better since last year. They really struggled to get him bigger. He's just a kid that can't really put on the weight that somebody at his age should be able to do. And it's not for lack of trying. They've really tried to bulk him up, get him in the weight room, get him eating more, but he just doesn't seem to be somebody that can be physical inside. And what he lacked in physicality, he would make up for with grit and hustle, chasing down rebounds. And we just haven't seen that from Marek Dolezaj this year. I think opposing teams kind of know what they're doing. But as many of you are noting here in the comments, listen, you got to move the ball. That's when Syracuse really gets things going, when they're moving, not this stagnant offense that they're in. And now you've got Girard at the point, who I think is going to be a great player. I do. I think Joe's going to develop into something, but he is smaller. And when he's not moving the ball, not coming off screens, not keeping a step ahead of an opposing team, when you get a physical player like Likely on him, he's going to lock him down. Rob noting, as good of a game as Hughes had, foul trouble kept him, Dolezaj, and Sidibe from being all that we need them to be. Oklahoma State's experienced team played well tonight, and they were well coached. It's imperative that our younger guys benefit and grow from this experience for us to be a team that makes the tournament. Happy Thanksgiving to all of you, and happy Thanksgiving to you, Rob. Always appreciate you coming by. And that's a big thing. I'm not going to rail on the refs for this one because, again, they called it even. They called everything. The whistles, there were plenty of them in this game. I would have liked to seen Syracuse compete without such a tightly called game. I don't know why these officials, Michael Stevens, is every time I see him on the stat sheet, I cringe because he's just going to blow his whistle a lot. But at least that's what's going to happen. That's got to be part of the game plan. You got to tell these players who the refs are, what kind of game they call, and be ready for that. Now, Hughes just made a really dumb – his 4th foul was just dumb. Likely's taking a low percentage shot, 3-pointer, goes over and gets them. There were a couple calls that I could quibble with, right? But I would have liked to seen Syracuse compete in a game where Hughes is not in foul trouble. Dolezaj is not in foul trouble. And I don't think it matters with Sidibe. I haven't really brought him up there's another player who's, I hate to just go to this kind of standard expression, but he is what he is. You knew he was going to struggle against a player like Onley. Barama has his moments. I like that he took the ball to the rim a couple of times tonight when he needed to, but still, that's got to be instinctive at this point. Get the ball inside. When you're by the rim, dunk the ball, or at the very least go up and attempt the dunk so you get the free throw attempts, right? The progress isn't there for him and Dolzaj where it needs to be. Jesse Edwards is a project at this point. I think Robert Braswell needs to see more time because that's a big he's not a center, but he's a big who can score. He's athletic. He can shoot the three, hit a three tonight. I think he's slowly earning Boeheim's trust a little bit more, but I think you got to, get him off the short leash. Trademark Brent Axe. But I think we got to see more of this guy. Why not? Because what else is happening interior? Quincy Guerrier is still trying to figure it out in there that would keep Braswell off the floor right now. It all comes down to defense for Boeheim, but you know what? I think we got to see Bob Braswell in there. Free Bob. Right? Michael Antonio says Syracuse should never be in the weak position to be forced to develop a young, under-talented squad. This program should be a top 10 national title contender, every year. Mike saying we continuously get out coached. It seems like we don't have an offensive game plan. What are your thoughts, Axe Man? Mike, my thoughts are what we just said a moment ago. They've got to stop this offense where they're just holding it to the shot clock. They've got to move the ball better. People know Syracuse is going to do that pick and roll, top of the key. They've got to come up with something else. I totally agree with you. They've got to be more creative on offense. They've got shooters. Now, Buddy struggled tonight, but Buddy has been better because teams are going to chase him off the three-point line. He's been better. I think he's developed the shot, but has to continue to develop that step inside right inside the three-point line shot. I think Girard's going to be fine offensively, but has to get space. The teams are going to figure out that Elijah Hughes is the guy, and they're going to key on that. So I think you need some sort of interior scoring, and they have none right now. And I think the guy that pops to mind immediately there who's going to play is Quincy Guerrier. You need Guerrier to really develop. He's smart about what he's doing, and he's got to be better at the free throw line because he's getting to the free throw line a bunch at this point. But Syracuse is kind of predictable. It is kind of stagnant right now. I think they do have to put a little juice in that lineup, and I see a few of you mentioning this, and I totally agree with you. And I've asked Boeheim about this, and when I did ask him about it in a recent conversation, he brushed me off and said we play 8-9 guys in the big games. Well, you know what? You got to go to 10 then because Braswell needs to play. You've got to find that kid time. Let's see. Great comments here. Can barely keep up with you guys tonight. You're fired up. I love it. Let's see. Mike says Oklahoma State picked to finish 6th in their conference, and they cannot compete with that. Chris saying Syracuse has to move without the ball. A lot of you saying about the ball movement. I completely agree with that. Christopher noting that the transition defense was invisible, unlike a Q's team. Somebody made that point on Twitter. My guy Bob Manning, we'll give him a shout-out. You know who really was good at that is Pascal Chukwu. Now, Chukwu obviously had his weaknesses, but he could get down the floor and establish himself inside. Obviously, had the wingspan and the presence inside. That transition defense really struggled tonight. That's a great observation, Christopher. The Wolfman says, I've been watching Q's for 37 years. This is the worst I've seen them. Embarrassing. Mike says Hughes was great. The rest of the team was challenged. No offensive scheme the last 5 years. Joe saying stop recruiting for the zone, which is stale. Mary Ellen noting that they have no game under the basket. That's a great observation, Mary Ellen. Recruiting-wise, it's interesting because Woody Newton's a player I really like next year. I think is a player who's got not to use the old standard expression here in recruiting, but has tremendous upside, and I think really fits what Syracuse does. I like what they're doing there. They've, missed on a few big recruits as of late, right? Isaiah Jackson, Andre Jackson, big-time 5-star blue blood guys that will really put a big lift into Syracuse. The good news is that they are in the Final Three for these players. The bad news is they're not closing on any of them. So, but I like what they've got in Woody Newton next year. And, I'm forgetting the other kid that they have committed next year. You guys are recruiting gurus. You remind me who the other 2020 commit is. I don't know as much about him, honestly, but I'm pretty high on Woody Newton. But that's next year. You've got good recruits this year. You've got a Bryson Goodine who is pushing for time. I think they have to mix in there. I like what Howard Washington Jr. can do in terms of stabilizing the offense, in terms of stabilizing the team, making good decisions. He's just not as athletic, though, and not as big as Bryson Goodine. And, Gerard's going to have his moments where he struggles. So Goodine has played consistently, and I like that. But, he's got to get to a point where he can contribute and is not just kind of learning on the job as he is right now. Freshmen have to grow up quicker in college basketball these days. That's just the bottom line. They don't all come out of the oven, use another Thanksgiving reference, ready to go, 5-star level. Look, Duke lost to Stephen F. Austin, as we all saw last night. Kentucky lost to Evansville at home. Michigan State's lost 2 games. Kansas got pushed by Dayton tonight. Almost lost that game in Maui. So even the top elite teams that are getting these 5-star players, they're struggling. Why? Because a lot of freshmen are not on that Zion Williamson, R.J. Barrett ready right out of the box. A lot of talent there, but even they have to develop as players. So I'm not saying Syracuse has that level of talent, but even the teams that are getting that level of talent, I think it's fair to mention, they've all struggled and have lost games that they absolutely should not have at this point in the season. Blake saying, do you think the game has changed where you need more three-point shooters than big men? It certainly has. You look at what the Golden State Warriors have done. It's all around college basketball. They moved the three-point line back about a foot because of that. Syracuse has three-point shooters. They have Hughes, they have Buddy, they have Joe. Quincy can step back and hit a three. Braswell can step back and hit a three. But when you live and die by the three and you don't score at all, as we saw tonight, you can get pushed around by a bigger, more physical team. But that is where the game is definitely going. No question about it. Matt's saying, Brent, no team is sticking out as dominant. Could be a wide open year. It really could be. It absolutely could be a wide open year in college basketball. Jay Billis said that, and we're seeing it. I just mentioned it. It's coming to fruition now with all these top teams that have lost already. My man Joe, Brent, how do you season your bird for Thanksgiving? You got to brine the turkey. You got to brine it up, Joe. By the way, team fried turkey. Once you go fried turkey, you don't go back, kids. I'm sorry. The old traditional oven turkey, out the window. Fried turkey all the way, baby. But a nice brine, that's the way to go right there. That is the way to go. Anthony saying, has anybody noticed how uncompetitive Syracuse has been the last few years? It has been at times. It's interesting because last year they weren't on the bubble. They won 10 ACC games despite losing 4 non-conference games. They had no trouble making the tournament. It was kind of a weaker bubble last year, which helped them. They lost in the first round to Baylor. There has been years when they should not have been in but made the Final Four. Years where, Middle Tennessee State knocks off Michigan State and gives Syracuse a clear path to the Final Four. Years they absolutely should have been in the tournament. 2017 comes to mind, and they don't get in. But it has been stressful the past few years. Other than last year, and the one year it wasn't stressful, they lost to Baylor in the first round. So the good news is they're still either making the tournament or on the fringe of it. Uncompetitive to me, big picture-wise, would be like losing records, not making the tournament, consecutive 3, 4, 5-year run in the NIT. But that's not what the Syracuse standard is. Somebody else mentioned that in the comments earlier, and that's fair to say. That is not what the standard is here. To just kind of get by, right? Christopher thinks 7 ACC wins tops. Look, I'll say this. The ACC is pretty wide open. It's pretty wide open. Once you get past the heavyweight, Syracuse is really going to struggle with Duke and North Carolina. They tend to play well against North Carolina generally because of the pace of play that Carolina goes at. It's just run up and down the floor and score. But we saw what happened against Virginia, right? I understand that was the first game of the season, but when they play that team again on January 11th, how much will really change, right? But once you go middle of the pack and below in the ACC, it's pretty wide open, though. So those are the games you got to win. Those are the games you got to start to kind of rack up at this point. Javen saying, honestly, I know he lost, but I already feel like this offense looks better than the last 2 years. Long time no see, Brent. Great to see you, Javen. Happy Thanksgiving to you and yours, my friend. The Wolfman saying, we've come to expect more. The game has passed Boeheim by. I wouldn't say that, but there are some things Jim is pretty stubborn on. That, the word is evolve. You got to learn what's happening out there and apply it to your team. I think Syracuse has done that in some ways, but they're pretty darn predictable in others. Ron saying made 40% in threes, and we have a chance. Shoot like tonight, no chance. Defense disappointing tonight. That's it. They're going to live and die by the three. You got to get more, inside the paint. I don't think Syracuse is going to shoot this bad this often with those opportunities. Tonight they weren't dropping. This is not an excuse by any stretch, but Elijah Hughes had to change shoes. The floor was very slippery. I think players got a little hesitant out there. That was on both sides, by the way. I think there was ice under the court at the Barclays Center. I could be wrong about that, but they were really slipping and sliding out there tonight. Let's see. Jermaine noting that football season is already over. Basketball season, it's young. It's not over yet. The lacrosse team is going to be pretty darn good. But we're not turning the page yet. It's only November. Let's see. Yeah, Chris brings up a good point here. So Syracuse New York City was your home away from home, right? Well, by losing this game tonight, they're now 1-4 at the Barclays Center. That includes some ACC tournament losses, but remember last year they go to New York, lost back-to-back games to Oregon and UConn, threat of doing that. Penn State's got some big guys. Penn State blew a big lead against Ole Miss in the first game. They had a 21-point lead, but they could win the same way tomorrow that Oklahoma State won tonight. Syracuse has got to shoot better in that guy. I say tomorrow, I mean on Friday night. They've got to shoot better Friday night against Penn State. But New York City is just not the advantage it used to be. They lost to St. John's and MSG in recent years. And I know they beat UConn at MSG, but correct me if I'm wrong, in the last 4 or 5 years, I'm pretty sure they have a losing record in New York City overall. If not, it's pretty darn close to 500. What happened to that, right? That used to be your home away from home. Dick Vitale and Doug Gottlieb used to complain about that all the time. Speaking of which, what could have been? If Gottlieb got the Oklahoma State job, would have been coaching against Boeheim tonight, but just was not meant to be. So I think that's where we will end it for tonight. I'm going to get cracking on the recap. Hope you guys can check that out in the morning as you're getting all your turkeys and your side stuffing and everything ready for the big feast. I hope all of you have a terrific Thanksgiving. A programming note, I will not be here Friday night. I'm taking some time off for the holiday, so I will not be here for the live chat. No recap for Friday's game against Penn State. We'll be back at it Saturday, though, for football in the season finale against Wake Forest, and then we'll be around for the foreseeable future basketball-wise. But I will not be here Friday. So you guys enjoy your Thanksgiving. You enjoy some time with family, friends, football, food, and we'll meet back here again basketball-wise. So the next basketball chat we're going to do is the Iowa game. That's December the 3rd. I'll be on the football page after Wake Forest, and then we'll get into a nice steady rhythm of doing these chats. We'll do one for Georgia Tech. We'll do one for Georgetown. And then before you know it, ACC play will be here. But we will not be here Friday night, just so you guys know. Thanks for coming by tonight. Thanks to our friends at Krause Health. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. We'll talk to you next time here on Facebook Live.